My son sent me one sentence that ended my entire life as a mother, and I did not reply a single word. The message appeared on my phone on a quiet Tuesday morning, just after I finished washing my coffee mug and set it upside down on the counter. I remember the exact wording because it burned itself into my memory. Do not call me anymore. I am tired of you and your requests. That was it. No greeting, no explanation, no goodbye. I stood in my small kitchen in New York, the city already alive outside my window, horns blaring, footsteps rushing past, life moving forward as if nothing had happened. I read the message again, and then again. My hands did not shake. My chest did not tighten the way I expected. Instead, something inside me went very still. Requests. I whispered the word out loud, testing it. What requests had I ever made of my son? My name is Eleanor Brooks. I am 64 years old. I am a widow, a retired accountant, and until that moment, I believed motherhood was permanent, unconditional, unbreakable. I had raised my son Lucas alone after his father died in a construction accident when Lucas was 8. I worked long hours, balancing books for small family-owned businesses, coming home late, eating cold dinners, telling myself it was temporary. Everything I did was for him. Every sacrifice made sense as long as he was okay. So when that message came, I did what I had never done before in my life. I said nothing. I did not respond. I did not call back. I did not send a follow-up text trying to explain or apologize or soften myself into something easier to tolerate. I placed my phone face down on the table and went about my day like a woman learning how to breathe in a new way. The silence that followed was terrifying at first. Days passed, then weeks. My phone stayed quiet. No check-ins, no accidental calls, no messages sent and deleted. I went to my doctor appointments alone. I sat in waiting rooms, surrounded by strangers scrolling through photos of grandchildren, while I stared at the floor. When my test results came back normal, I smiled politely at the nurse and drove myself home. I began to notice things I had ignored for years. How often my house was quiet. How much time I had spent waiting for calls, waiting for visits, waiting to be needed. 8 weeks after that message, my phone rang. Lucas. For a long moment, I stared at his name on the screen. My thumb hovered. Somewhere deep inside me, the old reflex stirred, the instinct to answer no matter what, because that was what mothers did. I answered. Mom? His voice was rushed, breathless. We are in trouble. Vanessa and I are behind on rent. We need money, fast. $2,000 by Friday or we are getting evicted. Can you send it today? No apology, no hesitation, no acknowledgement of the sentence he had used to cut me out of his life. Something settled inside me then, quiet and firm. I am sorry, I said calmly. I do not know who you are. I do not have a son. And before he could speak again, I ended the call. I sat there in my kitchen, the phone still warm in my hand, realizing that whatever came next, there was no going back. Before Lucas became a voice on the phone asking for money, before he became a name that made my stomach tighten, he was a little boy with scraped knees and too many questions. I was 29 when his father died. One moment we were arguing about groceries, and the next I was standing in a hospital hallway in New York, holding a plastic bag with his wallet and watch inside it, being told that a steel beam had slipped and there had been nothing anyone could do. Lucas was 8 years old. He sat beside me on the hard chair, his legs dangling, swinging back and forth because they did not reach the floor yet. He did not cry. He just asked when his dad was coming home. From that day on, everything became about survival. I kept my job as an accountant, working for small, family-owned businesses that paid just enough to keep the lights on. During the day, I balanced ledgers and reconciled numbers. At night, I balanced exhaustion and fear. I learned how to stretch a dollar until it felt thin as paper. I learned how to smile even when my body ached. I learned how to be both parents at once. Lucas never went without. That was my promise to myself. When he needed braces, I took on extra clients. When his school offered a class trip I could not afford, I found a way. When he wanted to apply to colleges outside the state, I told him to dream big and stayed up late filling out paperwork I barely understood. There were nights I sat at the kitchen table with bills spread out like a losing hand, calculating which could wait and which could not. I never told Lucas when I skipped meals. I never told him when I cried in the shower so he would not hear. To him, I was just Mom, steady, reliable, always there. When he graduated college, I cried harder than I had at the funeral. I believed I had done it, that the hardest part was behind us. He got a job. He met Vanessa. He moved out. I told myself that was what success looked like. The requests started quietly. A little help with a security deposit. A short-term loan until his first paycheck cleared. Money for a car repair that could not wait. Each time he promised it was temporary. Each time I said yes without hesitation. When Lucas married Vanessa, I paid for what I could. Not because they asked outright, but because I offered. I wanted to be useful. I wanted to feel included. When they thanked me, it was quick and distracted. But I told myself that was enough. I believed that love meant giving and not keeping score. What I did not see then was how slowly the balance shifted, how conversations became shorter, how visits became rare, how my role quietly changed from mother to resource. I told myself it was normal, that children grow up, that independence looks like distance, that I should be proud he did not need me anymore. But the truth was simpler and harder. He did not need me as a mother. He needed me as a solution. And I had spent decades teaching him that I would always be one. I did not notice the moment when love began to feel like duty. It did not arrive suddenly. It crept in quietly, disguised as concern, as responsibility, as what a good mother was supposed to do. Lucas stopped calling just to talk. When my phone rang, there was always a reason now. Rent had gone up. Vanessa needed dental work. Their car had broken down on the way to work. There was always urgency in his voice, always a deadline that made saying no feel cruel. I sent the money before he finished explaining. Sometimes he promised to visit soon. Sometimes he said we would have dinner together once things calmed down. Most of the time the call ended quickly, as if once the problem was solved, there was nothing left to say. Weeks would pass in silence. I told myself that was normal. Young couples were busy. Life was expensive. I remembered how hard it had been when Lucas was small, how one unexpected bill could throw everything into chaos. I told myself I was helping him build stability. I told myself this was temporary. It never was. One winter, Lucas asked if I could co-sign a loan so they could renovate their apartment. He said it would increase the value. He said it was an investment. I hesitated for the first time in years. Not because I did not trust him, but because something in my chest felt heavy and wrong. I signed anyway. I did not tell my friends. I did not tell my sister. I knew what they would say, that he was grown, that I was risking too much, that I deserved to rest. I did not want to hear it. I wanted to believe that helping my son was still the right thing to do. Holidays came and went. Thanksgiving dinners I cooked for two turned into meals for one when Lucas canceled at the last minute. Christmas mornings were quiet. Birthday cards I mailed were never acknowledged. When I hinted that I missed him, he said I was being emotional. "You know I love you, Mom. Things are just busy right now." Busy enough to ask for money. Too busy to sit with me for an hour. Vanessa rarely spoke to me directly. When she did, her tone was polite but distant, as if I were a neighbor rather than family. I sensed she did not like me, but I blamed myself for that too. Maybe I hovered. Maybe I gave too much advice. Maybe I expected too much. So I pulled back in every way except the one that mattered. I kept giving. Every time my bank balance dipped, I felt a flash of fear followed by relief. Fear for myself. Relief that I had fixed another problem for him, that I was still useful. I did not see that I was teaching him something dangerous, that my love was endless and unconditional, yes, but also limitless, that there would always be more money, more forgiveness, more understanding. By the time the requests became demands, by the time irritation crept into his voice when I asked how he was doing, the pattern was already set. I was no longer his mother in his mind. I was a safety net he had learned to lean on without looking down. And I was the only one who did not realize how close I was to tearing apart. The call that changed everything did not begin as a fight. It was a gray afternoon in early spring, the kind of day where the city feels heavy, clouds pressing low, the air thick with unspoken things. I had just returned from a doctor's appointment, my mind still buzzing with medical words and what-ifs. The tests were routine, the doctor had said, but routine did not feel comforting when you were alone. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at my phone for a long time before dialing. I did not need money. I did not need help. I did not need anything at all. I just wanted to hear my son's voice. Lucas answered on the third ring. I knew immediately that he was annoyed. There was a sharpness in his breathing, as if I had interrupted something important. "Mom, what is it now?" The words stung, but I pushed through them. I told myself not to be sensitive. "I just wanted to talk," I said. "I have not heard from you in a while." "I am in the middle of something," he replied. "Make it quick." I felt small then, smaller than I had felt in years. Still, I tried. "I had some tests done today," I began. "The doctor says everything is probably fine, but I just thought I should tell you." There was a pause. Not concern, not worry, just impatience. "Mom, seriously, I do not have time for this." For this? As if my voice, my fear, my existence were an inconvenience on his schedule. I reminded him softly that I was his mother, that I was not asking for anything, that I only needed a minute. That was when he said it. "Do not call me anymore. I am tired of you and your requests." The sentence landed with a dull finality, like a door slamming shut in a quiet room. Requests. I opened my mouth to speak, to defend myself, to ask what he meant, but the line went dead. He had already hung up. I sat there with the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. Around me, the apartment looked the same as it always had. The same table, the same chair, the same framed photos on the wall. Lucas at 5 years old, missing his front teeth. Lucas at his college graduation, smiling proudly. Lucas on his wedding day, my arm tucked into his, both of us laughing. In every photo, I was looking at him with love. In none of them was he looking back the same way. Something cracked open inside me then, not loudly, not all at once, just enough to let the truth seep in. I had never made requests. I had made myself available. I had offered help before it was asked. I had filled silences with solutions. I had mistaken generosity for closeness and sacrifice for love. And now, in his mind, my presence had become a burden. I did not cry that afternoon. I did not throw the phone or scream or call anyone. I simply set the phone down on the table and stared at it until the screen went dark. For the first time since Lucas was born, I did not call him back. Not that day, not the next, not the next week. I went to my follow-up appointments alone. I cooked for one. I slept in silence. The ache was there, constant and dull, but beneath it was something new and unfamiliar. Space. And in that space, a question began to form, one I had never allowed myself to ask before. If I stopped reaching out, would my son ever reach back? I did not know the answer yet, but I knew I was about to find out. The silence did not kill me the way I thought it would. At first it felt unnatural, like holding my breath for too long. I kept reaching for my phone out of habit, checking it even though I knew there would be nothing there. No missed calls, no messages, no accidental pocket dials that I could pretend meant something. Days turned into weeks. I went to my follow-up appointments alone and stopped pretending I did not notice. I sat in waiting rooms surrounded by couples and families, listening to names being called, watching people lean toward each other, whispering. When the nurse asked if someone was joining me, I said no with a smile that felt rehearsed. At home, the evenings stretched long and quiet. And then something unexpected happened. I started filling the silence. I joined a small reading group at the local library. Nothing dramatic, just a circle of strangers talking about books and complaining about the weather. I volunteered twice a week at a community pantry, organizing shelves and handing out bags without anyone knowing my history or my failures as a mother. For the first time in years, I was Eleanor again, not just someone's safety net. I slept better. Not deeply at first, but without the constant tension of waiting for the phone to ring, without the background fear that another crisis was coming, Another emergency that would require me to empty my savings and reassure myself it was worth it. 8 weeks passed. On a warm Tuesday evening, my phone buzzed while I was making dinner. I looked at the screen and felt my stomach tighten. Lucas. I stared at his name for a long time. Part of me wanted to let it ring, to protect the fragile peace I had begun to build. But another part of me knew that if I did not answer, the question would haunt me forever. I answered. "Mom." His voice was urgent, rushed. "We are in trouble. Vanessa and I are behind on rent. We need $2,000 by Friday or we are getting evicted. Can you send it today?" He spoke quickly, as if speed might prevent me from thinking. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of what he had said 2 months earlier, no concern for how I had been, just a familiar expectation that I would fix it. I listened quietly. Then I said, "No." "I am sorry," I told him. "I cannot help you." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "What do you mean you cannot help? You always help." That sentence landed harder than his original text. Always. In that moment, something shifted completely. I heard it clearly then. Not a request, an assumption. I ended the call shortly after, my hands steady, my voice calm. When the line went silent, I sat down at the table and stared at the wall. I did not feel guilty. I felt curious. That night, I opened my laptop and logged into my bank accounts. I told myself I was just checking, just being responsible. But as I scrolled through years of transactions, my curiosity turned into shock. Transfers, withdrawals, payments, again and again. Thousands of dollars moving out, rarely anything coming back in. I opened a notebook and started writing them down. Dates, amounts, reasons I remembered, some I did not. Then I saw something that made my breath catch. A loan payment, in my name, one I did not recognize. My heart began to pound, not with fear, but with a growing cold awareness. The silence had not been empty. It had been clearing the noise. And now, for the first time, I was starting to see the truth. I did not sleep that night. The loan payment sat on my screen like an accusation, quiet but undeniable. I clicked through the details again and again, hoping I had misunderstood something. But the numbers did not change. The name was mine. The responsibility was mine. And yet, I had never signed for it. By morning, denial was no longer an option. I printed my bank statements and spread them across the kitchen table. The same place where I once helped Lucas with homework. The same surface where I had signed birthday cards and written checks without hesitation. Now it was covered in proof. Years of it. The total made my stomach turn. I had given Lucas and Vanessa more than I had ever admitted to myself. Not just gifts, not just help. Money that had quietly reshaped my future, while I told myself I was being generous. And that loan. That was something else entirely. I called the bank. The woman on the phone was polite, professional, careful with her words. She confirmed what I already knew. The loan had been opened using my personal information, my address, my social security number. The signature on file looked like mine, she said, but it was not. I hung up and sat very still. For a moment, I wanted to believe it was a mistake, a clerical error, something that could be fixed with a phone call and an apology. But deep down, I already knew better. That afternoon, a message came in from Vanessa. It was not an apology. It was not concern. Why are you making things difficult for us? Lucas says you are being dramatic. You should be grateful we even keep in touch. I read it twice, then a third time, and something inside me finally snapped into place. They had never been confused. They had never misunderstood. They had made a decision. I took a screenshot. That message became the turning point, the moment when hurt turned into resolve. The next day, I met with an attorney who specialized in protecting older adults from financial exploitation. Her office was small and quiet, tucked between a bakery and a dry cleaner. I told her everything: the money, the silence, the loan, the message. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she folded her hands on the desk and looked at me directly. Eleanor, what you are describing is not family conflict. It is financial abuse. The word abuse felt heavy, but it also felt accurate. She explained my options carefully: how to secure my accounts, how to remove Lucas from any access he might have, how to document everything, how to prepare for escalation, because people rarely give up control quietly when it has served them well. I left her office with a folder full of instructions and a clarity I had never felt before. That afternoon, I went to the bank in person. I closed accounts. I opened new ones. I changed passwords. I revoked permissions I had granted years ago without a second thought. The banker asked if everything was all right. I told her the truth. I am protecting myself. When I turned my phone back on that evening, there were missed calls, messages, some from Lucas, some from Vanessa. The tone had shifted: confusion, anger, accusations. You are overreacting. This is family. You are going to regret this. I did not respond. Instead, I created a folder on my computer and labeled it simply Records. Every statement, every message, every detail. I backed it up twice. For the first time in my life, I was not reacting. I was preparing. And somewhere beneath the fear and the grief, a quiet certainty took hold. They had crossed a line they could not uncross, and this time, I was not going to look away. The backlash came faster than I expected. 2 days after I secured my accounts, Lucas showed up at my apartment unannounced. I saw him through the peephole, pacing the hallway, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand raking through his hair. My heart raced, but my hands were steady. I did not open the door. "Mom, I know you are in there," he said loudly. "This is insane. We just want to talk." I stayed silent. The knocking grew harder. Vanessa's voice joined his, sharp and controlled. "You are taking this too far. You are confused and making bad decisions." Confused. That word was deliberate, calculated. Later that evening, my phone rang from a number I did not recognize. The woman on the line introduced herself calmly, professionally. She was calling from a city agency. A report had been made expressing concern about my cognitive health and my ability to manage my finances. I understood immediately. Lucas and Vanessa had not come to apologize. They had come to regain control. The next morning, I called my attorney. She did not sound surprised. "This happens often when exploitation is cut off," she said. "They try to paint you as unstable so they can step back in as caretakers. We will cooperate fully. You have nothing to hide." The agency visit was scheduled for the following week. In the days leading up to it, the messages escalated. "You are embarrassing us. People are asking questions. If you loved your son, you would not do this." Vanessa sent one message that made my stomach drop. If they decide you are not competent, everything goes through Lucas. Think carefully before you ruin your own life. I forwarded it to my attorney without replying. The visit itself was almost anticlimactic. The caseworker was kind, thorough, and observant. She asked about my daily routine, my health, my finances. I answered calmly, providing documentation for everything. My medical record showed no impairment. My financial record showed years of one-way support. The messages showed a clear pattern of pressure and manipulation. By the time she left, her tone had changed. "Mrs. Brooks," she said gently, "I do not see any indication that you are unable to manage your affairs. But I do see signs of something else. We will be looking into this further." That was when things unraveled for Lucas and Vanessa. The investigation did not stop with me. As agencies reviewed records, patterns emerged, other names, other complaints, other accounts tied to similar behavior. The loan in my name was not the only one. The trail was longer than I ever imagined. One afternoon, my attorney called me with a quiet intensity in her voice. "Eleanor, law enforcement is involved now. I need you to understand this clearly. You did not cause what is about to happen. You revealed it." 2 weeks later, Lucas was arrested. Vanessa was arrested the same day. The charges were serious: identity fraud, financial exploitation, multiple victims. I sat alone in my living room when I heard the news, staring at the wall where family photos used to hang. I felt no triumph, no relief, just a deep, hollow stillness. This was the collapse I had unknowingly been standing in front of for years. Lucas called me once from a number I did not recognize. I did not answer. For the first time, he was facing consequences I could not soften. And for the first time, I understood something painful and final. Saving him had never been my job. Letting him fall was the only honest thing left to do. The days after the arrests were strangely quiet. No calls, no messages, no urgent voices demanding answers or money or forgiveness. For the first time in years, the silence did not feel like punishment. It felt like rest. The legal process moved forward without me needing to do anything more. My attorney handled the details, updating me only when necessary. Lucas and Vanessa were charged with multiple counts of fraud and financial exploitation. The evidence was overwhelming. The loan in my name was only a small part of a much larger pattern. Other victims came forward, people who had trusted them, people who had been manipulated the same way I had. I was officially cleared of all financial responsibility. Every fraudulent account was closed. My name was restored. When the confirmation letter arrived, stamped and formal, I sat at my kitchen table and read it twice. Then I placed it in a folder and put it away. I did not frame it. I did not celebrate it. I simply exhaled. I did not visit Lucas in jail. I did not write letters asking why. I did not try to explain myself. For the first time since he was born, I allowed his life to move forward without me intervening. And something unexpected happened. My own life began to expand. I filled my apartment with small, deliberate changes. I took down the old photographs that kept me trapped in memories that no longer existed. In their place, I hung new things. A painting I made myself at a community class. A photograph from a day trip I took alone. a calendar filled with plans that did not revolve around anyone else's crisis. I returned to the library every week. I stayed after meetings to talk instead of rushing home. I accepted invitations instead of declining them out of habit. I began volunteering more regularly, not because I needed to feel useful, but because I enjoyed it. I learned who I was when I was not waiting. Months later, I heard through my attorney that Lucas had accepted a plea deal. Vanessa received a longer sentence due to prior offenses. Their marriage ended quietly, without drama. There was nothing left to save. I felt no satisfaction in that, but I also felt no guilt. One afternoon, as autumn settled over the city, I realized something that startled me. I was happy. Not the forced kind of happiness that comes from pretending everything is fine. Real happiness. The quiet kind that settles into your bones when you finally stop fighting yourself. I still loved my son. That did not disappear. But love no longer meant sacrifice without limits. Love no longer meant silence. Love no longer meant erasing myself. Motherhood, I learned, is not measured by how much you give until nothing remains. It is measured by the strength to stop when giving becomes destruction. I did not lose my son that day he sent that message. I lost the illusion that love requires endurance at any cost. What I gained was far greater. I gained my voice. I gained my boundaries. I gained my life. The lesson I carry now is simple, but it took me decades to learn. You are not cruel for protecting yourself. You are not selfish for saying no. And you are not a bad parent for refusing to be used. Sometimes the most loving act is letting go. And sometimes losing what hurts you is exactly how you finally find yourself.